the Nets are the better team. They are the better team. They are the more talented team. They have all the necessary pieces to get it done.
I don't think the game's over.
Welcome into Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. This is the Anti-Hot Take Sports Show because the game's not over until the clock strikes triple zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, email address, clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, you can follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 30spod. This is the number 30spod. That voice you heard was Richard Jefferson, former NBA player, current NBA jump host, who actually I think is doing a really good job, and he should probably keep the job full-time. That's just me. But that just lets you know that we're going to be talking some basketball. I told you last week that the NBA talk would return this week as we were getting ready for the kickoff of the NFL. We have a ton of NFL talk, but we do have a return of some NBA stuff, so we can get into that as well. But that being said, man, we got to get into this Week 2 action, and you know what that means. The Washington football team took on the New York football Giants, which is funny that they ended up with that name. Anyway, Taylor Heinicke stepped in for the injured Ryan Fitzpatrick, who dislocated his hip. And before we get into this game, I just want to say Fitzpatrick's act, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but dude is always keeping the seat warm. If you want to have your next quarterback have a chance to develop, see some successful stuff, and then like literally just have a natural time when he can take over, because Fitzpatrick's going to give you that opportunity eventually. Doesn't usually happen this way. Usually comes in the way of his play. This one happened a lot sooner than I think any other time it's happened. Usually it's in the middle of the season. We start throwing picks and stuff like that, but not this time. It went down. He got hurt. Anyway, Taylor Heinicke stepped in and threw 34-46, 336 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. He looked really good, though. He was decisive. There were some moments. Remember now, this is a tough Giants front that he faced. They won this game, by the way, 30-29. On a last-minute field goal that they missed, got a second opportunity at because of a offsides call on Dexter Lawrence, defensive lineman for the Giants, which now supposedly the league is saying didn't really happen. They're going to have to get that phone call saying, our bad, we messed up. But what's wild is I believe that they looked at the play after calling it and still called it. So I for some reason, I have to go back and look at this, but I feel like I remember them saying it was about him lining up over the center, but whatever. Either way, Washington walked away with the W. Football Giants out here looking struggling. Some drops. My boy Darius Slayton had some drops. Kenny Golladay had some drops. Daniel Jones had damn near 100 yards on the ground. And yes, that's Daniel Jones, the quarterback. 9 for 95 and a touchdown. A long run for a touchdown, too. The dude has wheels. He's got some wheels. You know, to be honest, he reminds me a lot of Josh Allen before Brian Dable. Or before Brian Dable got his hooks into him, before he could actually work with them. And what I mean by that is you see a lot of natural ability, but the accuracy comes and goes, and it seems like there's some mechanical inconsistencies that he needs to overcome. Now, a lot of that is interesting because he comes from David Cutcliffe, the supposed quarterback guru, reported, I don't know how you want to put that, but the quarterback guru who has trained both Peyton and Eli Manning. So he comes from good stock, has had some good coaching. Might need some more, but there's enough there that the Giants are going to have a tough decision to make when it comes to his contract, I think, at the end of this season. You're not going to want to pay him big money, but you're not the next class isn't viewed that highly. Now, those things tend to change as we get closer to draft time, and, of course, quarterbacks always get overdrafted. But as it stands right now, doesn't look like a good crop. Jones is flashed enough to where you could suggest that, hey, especially if I'm ownership, I might say, and it's on me if I'm the owner, but the staffs haven't necessarily done the best for him. The way I think I heard it put today that really kind of summed it up is, what are the Giants? What are they trying to be? What's their identity? And they don't have one. Part of that is because of injuries. Saquon Barkley coming back off of ACL hasn't looked great. Has had some runs, but you've seen him get up and flex in his knee and hesitant. And he's spoken on it, and he said he's still thinking about it. And I think, honestly, at the beginning of the game, they did a report. And they talked about how he said, he's still going to have to have some pain, this and the third. It sounded in the report as if it was still at the forefront of his mind as opposed to being an afterthought. And until it's an afterthought, he's never going to look like the runner that we thought he could be. And he might not get there anyway. So you've seen a lot of talk, questions about should they be, is he overrated? Who's the most whatever. I'm not saying he's overrated, but I will say that I think I put it the way that he's been what everybody thought, including myself, thought Christian McCaffrey was going to be upon entering the league. Now, McCaffrey suffered an injury as well last season, but Saquon has been hurt since his first season, I think first year and a half, 2 years. Because he had 1,000 yards first 2 years. So I'm going to say after his first 2 years, he's been hurt the last two. But his running has gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And part of that is the Giants line and who's around him. True. So it's obviously the NFL's what have you done for me lately league. He hasn't done a lot lately, and that tends to dampen people's perception of you. So it's just interesting to me because he was a guy, when he was taken, you don't take running backs that high because of the wear and tear on the position. And look at how it's playing out for him, and it doesn't look like it's going to work out long run because they haven't maximized his potential. He hasn't maximized on his potential. The availability hasn't been there the past couple of seasons, like I said, and the Giants have kind of just been trying to figure out what to do. But they got Daniel Jones, and that's again, same kind of situation in that you just don't know what to do with it going forward because you haven't seen it all the way, but there's something there, just what exactly. The other part about this, though, they're pieces and not a team. And that's what I was talking about, what are they? What's their identity? And I think that goes to the head coach. And in a lot of ways, Joe Judge reminds me of Matt Patricia. The hard-nosed, he's good for some quotables. But in the end, there's going to be something that's just not right. And I could see this kind of behavior wearing on players after a while when the results don't come. That's usually what happens. You can be that way when you're winning. But when you're losing, nobody wants to hear you chew them out and talking. And listen, I think that might be happening somewhere on the lakefront in this general region where I'm at right now. But we'll talk about them in a second. The fact of the matter is, I just don't know how long Joe doesn't keep it up and then have them losing in the way that they do. Because a penalty, that comes to the head coach. That's, Lawrence came out and said, I think he came out and spoke against to say that he shouldn't have done it. Whatever the case may be. When the breakdowns are like that, and screw it, when everything doesn't work, period, the coach is the one who gets blamed, more than likely, unless, again, you're on the lakefront. But I digress. Good game for the football team. Good game for Heinicke. He deserves a shot. Still think they should look into somebody, maybe a Cam Newton, but, whatever. Terry McLaurin is the truth. Gave me a good start. So I told you last week I sat Rob Gronkowski in a Thursday night game and ended up losing the matchup that I sat him in. That's how that works. This week was all gung-ho, man. Hey, you know what? I'm not doing that again. They're playing primetime, man. I'm going to trust my guys. I drafted them. Trust them. Terry left him in there. Backup quarterback. Didn't worry about it. He's got some history with Heinicke. They'll be fine. Threw him in there. He did well. Except I have him in 2 leagues. See, this is the problem when you are a fantasy football junkie and you just keep on starting leagues up. You eventually, there's 2 problems with it. One, you end up ultimately playing against yourself because you have some of everybody, so you're gonna eventually be rooting for a guy that you have to not do well against you in this other league. So I tried to minimize it this year, but I'm still apparently losing track of who's on what team because I forgot to set a lineup with them in it, and it's one that my brother's in. And of course, you know how that goes. You want to win that one. That's just bragging rights. So, word to the wise, start your studs, at least the first half of the season. Get a good feel about who's doing what role is what, because things have changed. And, this one, the McLaurin thing, I think I said him early in the week just because I was unsure. But then I remembered that he had, he's had some work with Heinicke, I believe, last year, like I said, and had lost that fear, but apparently didn't translate that to going through and checking out that I forgot that I had him in 2 leagues. I'm going to be honest with you. I forgot I had him in 2. I thought I had him in 1. I was certain that I only had him in 1. Anyway, good for him. He ended up that game having 11 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown as Heinicke just kind of locked in on him, and I was here for it. I was everywhere. That was perfect. That works. that works. Also, before I go on the next game, I want to talk about Matt Patricia again. Big shout out to Mike Vrabel because so far he's been one of the few Belichick disciples that's come off looking like he can actually do this and know what he's doing and be successful at it long term. So we'll see what happens because this year actually they didn't get off to a great start. We'll talk about that in a second too. But he has seemed to be the most approachable, the most successful, at least early on. So on to week 2, the rest of the slate, and a little bit of a review because, as you see, this is a bit of a late post, and I got a lot to get to, and a little bit of time to get to it in because I wasn't going to do this pod. I wasn't going to record because I missed the original time, and then it got later and later and later on my makeup time, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do it. Then I thought about it. Can't do that. Got to get these picks on wax, man, because last week I was awful. I was absolutely awful picking games. I'm talking about like less than a handful of victories on last week's selection slate. So I'm going to try to do better this week. This is why I stopped doing the betting pieces because I just wasn't coming up right. And you know what? I'm not going to do that. I would get things that were going to happen right, but the final result just wasn't coming down the pipeline the way I predicted. So we're going to just keep making these picks here for fun. I will keep tally of them, though, and I got to get the final count. I'll try to put the final count in the description of this episode from last week, and then, of course, give you the written picks for this week. So that being said, let's get into it. First game up is Zach Part 1. This is Mac Jones taking on Zach Wilson in a battle of the rookies, Patriots versus Jets. Part 1 of what's to be a decade-plus showdown 2 times a year. This is the first one. Anyway, Mac Jones was good in his first week as the Patriots still lost to Miami 16-17. That was mostly on the defense Damian Harris fumbled at the 11-yard line. So that was kind of rough to see. But 74% completion, 281 passing yards and a touchdown. Didn't look flapped. Came in there, was throwing darts to everybody, distributing the ball evenly like the Patriots like to do. So his future looks like it's going to be right on track. That was one game against a team that we're still the jury's still kind of out on what the Dolphins are, but he looked good. There's no other way to put it other than that. Zach Wilson looked all right too. 54% completion, 251 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. They lost 19-14 to the Carolina Panthers. He was sacked 6 times, though, and lost his left tackle. So everything that you're going to look at with Zach Wilson this year is probably going to be through glass half full kind of thing because they're just not fully built yet. And it's a rookie head coach coaching a rookie quarterback who already needed some seasoning as it was. So it's going to be a long way to go. I'm not too discouraged. And there was definitely some flashes of potential there as he was going against a Patriots defense that has been stout. Not as stout as they typically are without Stephon Gilmore or whatever back there. Without the defense as a whole back there, rather. And it just, 6 times last week against the Panthers. 6 times. Anyway, I digress. Moving on. Broncos at the Jaguars. Oh, I'm sorry. Give me the Patriots in that one. I'm not. The Jets are probably going to be an easy team to pick against all season. Just saying. Moving on. Broncos versus the Jags. This is the pros versus the Joes. And I say that for a couple of reasons. First off, the stories around the Broncos there have been a lot between how they're going to handle the safety situation with Justin Simmons, how they're going to handle the DBs. Kyle Fuller got there. Bryce Callahan was going to be moved. They picked Patrick Surtain over quarterbacks. This, that, and the third. Drew Lock situation. They just lost Jerry Jeudy on offense. There's a lot. They drafted a running back. Well, they went out there and they stomped on the New York Giants in week 1, 27-13. Teddy Two Gloves, my boy Teddy Bridgewater, 77% completion, 264 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Melvin Gordon, 11 carries, 101 yards and a touchdown. He had a 70-yard run in the mix of everything. Now, those two are notable because, again, Drew Lock and Javonte Williams were the 2 young guys, that 2 homegrown talents that the Broncos are supposed to be trying to get looks at, and neither one of them started, or at least didn't have the biggest impact. Well, obviously, Lock didn't have any impact, but Williams played. And I just think it's interesting because all offseason it was talk of Drew Lock or Aaron Rodgers or this or that or this. And in the backfield, it was Javonte Williams is going to be the guy. He's going to be, they drafted him, they like him, he's going to be the guy. Well, for at least 1 week, it was Teddy Two Glove time and Melvin Gordon showing out. Like it. I like both of those guys. Melvin is local guy, Wisconsin, but he's from the land. Teddy Bridgewater been rooting for him since he was in Louisville. Had to root against him when he was with the Vikings, but I was rooting for him on this very pod, talking about the Bears should go after him. And so love to see him doing good here, especially after how they kind of tried to crap on him out in Carolina after last season. So good for him. Glad to see it. Trevor Lawrence on the other end of this game under Urban Meyer, who there's already been talks of his players not liking him. He's been linked to the open USC job, which he's openly shot down. But you can't blame him because there's been a story negatively about this team, at least about him and this team, since he got there. Trevor Lawrence, 55% completion, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, as the Jaguars are pretty much a mess and just going up there and doing things and seeing what sticks. This is a trial run season. That's what these kind of years are. We're not going to sit here and grade, per se, Trevor Lawrence's overall team thing or whatever, but this is a trial season for him. This isn't, and for them, this isn't anywhere near the final product, but I will say he's showing you some things. He's showing you some throws. He's like Wilson. He and Wilson both look like they have the talent, but they definitely need some more talent around them, A, and B, they need to go through some of this losing because I don't know if they've necessarily seen how important the quarterback has to be in those situations. As a fan of a team who hasn't had a quarterback since Sid Damn Luckman, okay, I can tell you the quarterback's leadership is highly important to keeping guys' morale up, or at least keeping fan spirits up even as teams go through tough patches. And they all go through tough patches. So, Trevor Lawrence is about to go through a tough patch. And if Urban doesn't stay, about to get tougher. So, still encouraged by what I saw with him raw numbers-wise, even with the poor completion percentage and the 3 picks. I just think that that team is not good. His line's not good. They lost the top running back who was going to be a big feature in their passing attack as well. And the defense is not anywhere near what they were when they went to the playoffs a few years ago. So not surprised. They did lose 21-37 in week 1 to the Houston Texans as Houston boat raced them. Don't even be confused about that score. We'll get to that in a moment as well. So in this one, I'm going to say the Broncos. They've just handled things better. Teddy is rolling. Jags don't scare anybody on either side of the ball. And this game has a look of a pros versus Joes type of matchup to me. So there's that. Bills versus Dolphins. Buffalo took a L versus Pittsburgh last week. This is one of the ones that I got wrong off the rip. 16-23. Josh Allen, 58% completion, 270 yards, and a touchdown. They were outscored 23-6 in the second half. And you know what? This goes back to them not having a sustainable running attack. Oh, Josh Allen's their best running back. That's all well and good, but you're not trying to put Josh Allen out there to run the ball to grind the clock out. Josh Allen is out there running the ball, scrambling, making plays, extending plays, all that kind of stuff in the flow. You want to get somebody to come out here and put a defense away, and that's where I think that they've kind of dropped the ball with Buffalo. Now, they're a very talented team, and I'm not saying what their limit is. I'm not putting a cap on them. I'm simply saying that if you want this thing to last and be sustainable, you're going to have to do a little bit better running the football, at least with in late game situations. Now, does that mean that they have to go out and get somebody else, or is it possible that they just, run the ball more and better? They didn't rely on it heavily last season, so I don't expect to see them go out and change up on that philosophy per se. But I do think that we could see them possibly focus on it more, right? Again, late game situations where I'm really talking about. I wouldn't even be really worried about it otherwise because, Allen's going to do a lot of that off-script stuff naturally. So you don't have to plan for it. But late in games, you definitely do. Use your running backs, preserve that defense, and go away with some victories. And use it more throughout the game, too. Why am I even trying to act like they don't need to? They definitely need to. That's how you got to get those body blows, man, to take effect later on in the game. Miami comes in with their 17-16 win, like I said, over the Patriots, but that was a defensive thing. Tua was 59% completion, 202 yards, a touchdown, and a fumble. He was saved by that Harris fumble because they were driving. They were at the Miami 11, I believe, when Harris dropped the ball. That was about to be Mac Jones' first win. So, that's what I was talking about. We don't know what the Dolphins are. This game, give me Buffalo. Now we're still on Trey Lance watch out in San Francisco. They're taking on the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts. It's funny because San Fran won 44-33 versus Detroit, but that game wasn't nearly as close as it looks like, as Detroit really put on a storm of a rally late to try to look like they were competitive. They weren't. Jimmy Garoppolo, though, This is why it's funny that we're on Lance watch. 68% completion percent, 68% completed 68% of his passes. Easy for me to say. 314 passing yards, a touchdown. Trey Lance, though, comes in and throws one pass, one completion, and gets a touchdown. You know what the talk was about, right? Wasn't about Jimmy G throwing for 314. It's about Trey Lance, 1 for 1 for 1. But that's because it was the Detroit Lions. So, my question is, do we really highlight Lance getting one touchdown off that one pass against the Lions if we're going to sit there and bash or not uplift Jimmy G's 314 and a touchdown versus the Lions? I know Jimmy didn't get the 1-1-1, but I mean, he was carving them all day and he kept them on schedule. Now, the other part of this is that it was the Lions. And so we have to see what they do this week against Philly, who got out and boat raced Atlanta 32-6 in that game. Jalen Hurts, 77% completion, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Eagles had 7 pass catches with 2+ catches. Devontae Smith, the guy who everybody said was too small, 6 catches, 71 yards and a touchdown in his first NFL game that counted. It's good stuff. This is good. This is one of the more exciting games because of the defense of San Fran versus the offense of Philly. And then the offense of San Fran woke up, at least in week 1, and Philly's defense hasn't always been great. So they held Atlanta. So this is the week where you find out how much of week 1 was a fluke, because a lot of it just seems like it was wrong. I know I didn't do great. I can't believe I was that off for that much. So we'll see how I do this week, though. This one's a toughie, but because of how I'm gonna say San Fran. I'm just gonna say San Fran. I'm gonna say that defense comes out and gives Philly something. I take that back. Yep, we're gonna flip it right here. Philly, give me Philly in a close one. I think Philly. San Fran might jump out, but Philly's a team that's not going to go away, and they're going to fight, and they got the weapons to do so. And so I'm going to take Philly in a close game at home, field goal or something like that. Old Face is a new place. Now, if you recall, I just talked to JJ Stankovitz of Colts.com a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about how the impact of Frank Reich on Carson Wentz and how their season's going to look and all other types of things. Go ahead and check that out. Again, this podcast is available wherever podcasts are available. That was a redundant statement. Either way, go check out that episode. Really good stuff from JJ. Always appreciate whenever he comes on. He's a really great guest, and really gracious with his time. So the Colts, though, let me down. They were one that I thought were going to go out there and take it to the Seattle Seahawks. That didn't happen. They lost 16-28. Wentz was 65% completion, 251 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw to his running backs 15 times. 15. I was more surprised by the Seattle pass rush that I didn't think that they had, but they do. And they won their game. I'm not even talking about Seattle right now. Seattle got to Carson Wentz, though, enough to make him uncomfortable. And that defense got torched a bit, to be honest with you. I talked to JJ about how they are better than the sum of their parts type of unit, but they were worse than at that point in that game against Russell Wilson as he went off on them. We'll talk about what he had in a few minutes here. But they're going up against the Colts are hosting the Rams. Matthew Stafford was sparkling in his debut against the Chicago Bears, 34-14 victory there for the Rams in LA. Stafford completed 76% of his passes, 321 yards, 3 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp, 7 catches, 108 yards. And the Darrell Henderson had 16 carries, 70 yards, and a touchdown. This is what I thought they were going to be. I thought people were kind of underselling Matthew Stafford because they saw him with the Lions and assumed that he must have just really been that bad. Been trying to tell y'all, the Lions suck as an organization. They will suck the life force out of you. That's what losing and being on a bad organization does. Message. And so I'm not surprised to see him go out there and thrive. Now, the Bears have an awful secondary. They played awful, even for an awful secondary. Blown coverages. Cooper Kupp shaking bacon tackles. At one point, I think it was Van Jefferson, caught a pass down the middle of the field, and both safeties just ran right past him and let him get up and go for a score. So a lot of things went the Rams' way, but they looked good either way it goes. They were just I find it hard to believe they wouldn't have found a way to get the ball in the end zone at least one of those times either way it goes. So there's that. Give me the Rams. I like their offense better than I like the Colts' offense. Their offense is more explosive. Their defense is just as good, if not better than the Colts. And I, again, just trust Matthew Stafford far more than I could trust Carson Wentz ever. So I'll take the Rams on the road in Indy. Raiders at Steelers. This game is about 50 years too late. I would have cared about this if this was 1970 something, maybe 1960 something, maybe even 1980 something. But right now, I don't give a damn. Vegas, though, 33-27 versus Baltimore last week on Monday night. Another one that I just got blatantly wrong because Carr went out there and completed 60% of his passes, 435 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. He had a game-winning 31-yarder to Zay Jones in overtime. That game was a barn burner and really one of the most exciting games that I've seen in quite some time. And maybe it's just because football's been gone and I was excited and whatever, but it was a great game. And I say that, again, I came out there not thinking that the Raiders had a chance, and they stunned me. They really did. So kudos to them. Hats off. Love it. Love to see that kind of stuff. They are going up against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got that 23-16 win over Buffalo. Ben, 56% completion, 188 yards, and a touchdown. They rallied from a 10-0 halftime deficit. And again, I told you last week, I got the pick wrong. But at the end of that one, I'm going to take this one because I said that I wouldn't be surprised if Pittsburgh won because they're a team that starts hot. That's what they do. Now, they weren't necessarily hot in this game, but they look like Pittsburgh. Defense and sound plays on offense to make it happen, and they did. So that's all that counts. That's all that counts. In this one, I'm taking Pittsburgh. The defense is still good. They're at home, and the Raiders are going East Coast. I think this is the noon game, I believe, as well, so you're going to get that early start. I just, give me Pittsburgh, man. Blitzburg at the crib. Joe Burrow takes on the Chicago Bears. The Bengals will head into Chicago after a 27-24 win over the Minnesota Vikings, in which Burrow completed 74% of his passes, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joe Mixon had 29 carries for 127 yards and a tug. Ew. So, here's the thing. Everybody's worried about the receivers, and you should be. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Jamar Chase are probably going to torch the Bears. But what you need to be worried about is Joe Mixon. And while you could say, oh, well, the Bears' run defense is really good. It is. But Mixon's going to catch passes, and he could do that early, and then late become a runner. And as we've seen, late in games is when the Bears are most vulnerable to the running game. The defense has typically been out there all game, and they're gassed. And Mixon is a big dude. He's like 6'1", 220, something like that, 230, something. He's a big dude. If you try to play that way, if you end up having a trail and you're trying to slow him down late in the game, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. And you've already had the safety, I believe it was, from the I'm sorry, was it safety or was it T. Higgins? Might have been a receiver. It was a receiver. T. Higgins talking about he was the Bengals are gonna come take over the city. Now listen, sir. Bengals might and probably will win this game on Sunday, but there is no way. This is how you know people don't know about Chicago. Okay. One thing you won't do is take over the city. You can win the game. I'm not even gonna hold you. And that's all that matters. But that other part was just unnecessary. So I hope, they're talking about, oh my goodness, he just took a shot at Chicago. That's a big shot at Chicago. All the players in that locker room just laughed that part off. Like, really, really, fam. There's one thing you will never turn this city out like that. I've seen it happen. It happens a lot of other teams in other cities. Wouldn't happen with Chicago. Period. I don't care. But this team's been bad for a long time. And these people are more invested now than they've ever been. There's your proof right there. Anyway, moving right along, talking about you going to own the city. Anyway, Texans at the Browns. Houston coming off that 37-21 boat race of the Jaguars. I feel so bad because I said the Texans had no shot at winning that game. There was nothing good in there. There was nothing worth rooting for. Tyrod, my boy Tyrod Taylor. How the hell did I forget that? My man has been everywhere. This is his return to Cleveland. He spent the season there back in 2018. 63% of his passes completed last week, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, as he shined in his debut. I don't care if it was versus Jacksonville. I like to see it because he got medically screwed out of last year's starting position with the Chargers through getting punctured lung from the team doctor. Like, what is that? Where does that even happen? Like, wow. I'm trying to remember what team that was that had the just worst training staff. It might have been the Bulls. But yeah, it was bad. That's a bad stuff. So I'm happy for him. Good for him. Good to see that. The Texans had a 27-7 halftime lead in this game. Just to let you know how bad it really got for Jacksonville last week. Cleveland, though, they're going to take on the Browns. They're coming off a tough loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. Remember, we talked about that going in. I said get a little funky because they were going to, I said they were going to win. I said take Cleveland for the win. They did not. They did not. But they had the ball and were driving when Baker Mayfield, who completed 75% of his passes, 321 yards, no touchdowns, threw his one interception on the final drive of the game to seal it for the Chiefs. Tough call, tough way to go out. The play was I want to say it was on first down, and he scrambled and just, instead of taking the sack, chucked it into coverage and got picked off. It was bad. Didn't look good, but they're getting closer. They're getting closer, and you could say, oh, well, if they can't do it with the formula, there is no formula to beat the Chiefs. I think that's the basic gist of an article that I read earlier this week. That's true, but don't mean they can't get better at doing it. And if they're the closest and they're the ones who are showing the way, then I would wager a bet that they might figure it out sooner rather than later. They're close. They're really close. That mistake, though, that can't happen. And I think that was kind of him pressing because he could feel how close they actually were to making it occur. So, next game. Give me the Browns in that one. Texans had a great story, but the Browns at the crib coming off of that loss. They're going to be salty. They're going to run it down the Texans' throats, and I just see the Browns getting a W to make their record 500. Saints at Panthers. New Orleans coming off a 38-3 drubbing of the Green Bay Packers, where Jameis completed 70% of his passes, 148 yards, 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns. 5. My boy, Squints, ate a W. I'm not going to do it because that's weird, but he ate a W. Love to see it. Love it because they had to go through all of that damn fake battle with Taysom Hill. Taysom had no chance. I'm going to tell you right now, Taysom Hill wasn't doing that. I'm just telling you. You saw the stat about Drew Brees not having the deep field passes. Brees commented on himself saying, I guess that's what they were missing. James was carving them bad boys up, and I love it because it was the Packers. Anyway, they'll be missing several coaches this week as they go to take on the Panthers with COVID. A whole bunch of COVID broke out after that, and so they have to even elevate Austin Ryder, center. A lot of stuff going on with the Rona out there in Newlands. They're taking on the Panthers. Like I said, they're coming off that 19-14 victory over the Jets. Sam Darnold, 68% completion, 279 yards and a touchdown. But they almost let the Jets come back last week. And that is a problem because you, as the Carolina Panthers, are in a position to take your foot off the gas. And if you're letting a team like the Jets come back, that means you weren't whooping the will out of them like you're supposed to. So, I don't know if most people have already figured this, but that in a 1-week capsule, because that's all it is, wouldn't scream or sound like a team that's not quite ready to compete, in which case I would ask, what are we doing with Sam Darnold? Because are we that impressed? Are we that impressed? See, he did well. He did well. It was against the Jets. We'll see what he does this week against a much tougher Saints defense. But they almost let the Jets come back. I can't overlook that. I wasn't going to pick them anyway in this game. Give me the Saints, by the way. But I definitely can't now. Vikings at the Cardinals. Minnesota took a 24-27 L versus the Bengals. Cousins, 73% completion, 351, 2 touchdowns. Thielen, 9 catches, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns, but it wasn't enough. They didn't get Dalvin Cook involved enough because he only had like 67 yards at the end of this game. The Bengals were after Kirk Cousins. That revamped front was doing its thing, and so you got to look out for that if you're Arizona and Kyler Murray. But they got out in a huge jump on Tennessee, 38-13 victory in that game, as Kyler Murray completed 65% of his passes, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns. I'm going to say it. I'm just going to say it. I know it's week 1, overreaction week, whatever. MVP? Was I just a couple seasons too early? I might have just been too early. I might have just been predicting the future and didn't even know. I thought I was doing the immediate future. It was distant future. He's on his way to the MVP. Now, maybe that's what's happening. No? Okay, whatever. Moving on. But just remember, I said it. The Cardinals defense, though, 6 sacks. Chandler Jones had 5. They were whooping fools. Okay? That's the defense. If Kingsbury has assembled a defense to go with that explosive offense, look out. The Cardinals are going to be an annoying team to have to face. No one's going to want to have to deal with them if that's the case for them. So we'll see about that. Give me the Cardinals. Don't trust the Vikings. Don't trust Kirk Cousins. I trust Dalvin Cook, but Cousins going to fumble the game away. I think, and here we go, Cousins will get benched this season. I don't know how long, but I think he'll get benched this season. Immediately took a cop out. You see how I did that? Give me the Cardinals, though, in this game. Falcons at Bucks. Atlanta's coming off that 32-6 loss to Philly. Matt Ryan, 60% of his passes completed, 164 yards. After that loss and how bad it was, seeing Matt Ryan laying there on the ground, broken and battered and bruised, the only thing I could think of was they really took Kyle Pitts, a tight end, who takes a year to develop, over a number of quarterbacks, but not the least of which, Georgia native Justin Fields. It's almost as if that's a bad idea. I know they like Matt Ryan. I know they didn't want to rebuild, but when you move Julio, that means you're acknowledging that a rebuild is closer than it is far away. You're not challenging for a championship. If you're not challenging for a championship, why are you paying so much money to Matt Ryan? To be mediocre at best. I'm not a big fan as it is, but you see it. What is he going to do for you when your team's not good? Nothing. There's no hope. He can't move, so he's not escaping any rush when the line breaks down, as we saw. What are we doing? What did you do that? This is such a hodgepodge. That this is something I accuse my favorite team of a lot, of not being married in ideas, where their phases are not doing the same thing at the same time. This is that. Now, maybe you could say they're putting pieces around before they go and get the quarterback, but you had a slew of them at your available to you, and you passed on all of them for a tight end. Much as I think Kyle Pitts is going to be a good player, didn't do much this game, and it's hard to see that he's going to impact winning in any meaningful way to the point where you kept Matt Ryan over drafting a quarterback. It just doesn't seem right. So, that being the case, that they are taking on the Buccaneers, who won a close one against the Dallas Cowboys last week in the Thursday night opener, 31-29. Brady, 64% completion, 379, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. Both of them weren't his fault, though, as most will tell you. The story for me was Antonio Brown. 5 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown. Now, Rob Gronkowski also had 8 catches, 90 yards, and 2 tugs, but that's Gronk. Gronk scored touchdowns. That's kind of what you'd expect to do. AB was so efficient, and this is the same game that Chris Godwin had, I think, 9 for 100 and something as well, and a touchdown. AB's 5 for 121 and a touchdown was vintage Antonio Brown stuff without the catches. It's more efficient than old Antonio Brown. Or you just say, well, if they'd have kept feeding him like old school Pittsburgh, he'd have just had 200 yards. I talked about it, teased a little bit. He's like Julian Edelman with more athleticism, with more coming from a better starting point. And while he might not have the short area quickness that Edelman had, that short, little jitterbug to him, I think he does everything else at so much a higher level that it makes up for it. And he's in for a big season this year. That's where I'll leave that one. So give me the Bucs over the Falcons. Titans at Seahawks. Tennessee 16-23 loss to Pittsburgh. Ryan Tannehill 60% completion, 212 yards, a touchdown and a pick. But Derrick Henry was held to 17 carries and 58 yards. I expect he'll do a lot better this week against the Seahawks, even though they did have a pretty solid effort against the Colts backs. I just don't see them. It's in Seattle. This is a tough one to pick, man. Seattle won 28-16 versus Indiana. Russ, 78% completion percentage, 254 yards, 4 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett, 4 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns on some Antonio Brown type stuff with more tugs. Give me the Titans. Ooh, I don't know, man. Give me Seattle at home. Because I'm not sure what this Tennessee offense is going to look like going forward without Arthur Smith. Didn't look great in week 1. Hard to see it fixing itself that fast, so I think we might get at least one more game where they don't look quite right, and so you get another Seahawks victory. Cowboys at Chargers. Dallas lost 29-31 to Tampa Bay. Dak, 72% completion, 403 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Amari Cooper, 13 catches, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ew. CeeDee Lamb, 7, 104, and 1. Cowboys don't have a defense. Pure and simple. That's just what it is. They just lost DeMarcus Lawrence for some time with an injury as well. So the pass rush got worse. Zeke didn't look great in his first action of the season. And the Chargers are going to come out there with a high-octane offense of their own after winning 2016 versus Washington. Justin Herbert, 65% completion, 337 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Keenan Allen, 9 for 100. And Mike Williams, 882, and a touchdown of his own. Now, here's the thing about this game. It's going to be a shootout. Neither one of these defenses are going to stop anybody as it is, really. But when you have the talent on the outside and in the backfield that you have in both of these teams, look out. It's about to be a high-scoring game. I'm all here for it. I'm going to take the Cowboys. I don't know why. I probably should take the Chargers because they do their thing, and their defense is better than the Cowboys' defense, and they're at home. But I want to feel like Dak will go out there and be able to take one. I think you get a better effort from Zeke, but that loss of DeMarcus Lawrence could be a tough one. I don't want to go all home teams either, though. I don't know. I part of me wants to say that Dak can pull it out, but early on, it's kind of tough to take the team that's got to travel again going east. You know what? I didn't pick either the Bengals game. Give me the Bengals, 27-14. Back to this game, though. That was depressing to even have to say. Back to this game, though. Give me the Chargers. I can't do it. Sorry, Dak. Love you. Can't do it. Give me the Chargers in this one. Probably less than a touchdown again, but I just think that at home, Chargers have a team that can put up points, and they'll get more stops. Neither one can stop anyway, but they'll get more stops than Dallas will in the long run. That's my take on that. Chiefs at Ravens. KC 33-29 over Cleveland last week. Patty Mahomes 75% completion, 337, 3 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill 11, 197 and 1. The Baltimore defense isn't what it was. Marcus Peters going down is bad for them. We'll see how they use their backfield this time as they let Latavius Murray rotate in, get more carries than Tyson Williams actually last week, and then you got Devontae Freeman coming up this week as well. Baltimore had that 27-33 loss to the Vegas Raiders as you had Lamar Jackson completing 63% of his passes, 235 yards and a touchdown. He also added 86 yards on the ground rushing, though, and so I think you would see a little bit more running attack from Baltimore. If Vegas or if Cleveland, has their blueprint, what does Baltimore have? Because they can do what Cleveland can do with the added dynamic of Lamar running. I'll be interested to watch this one. This might be my game of the week just because there could be something here. Well, I don't know. They weren't able to stop the Raiders, so I guess they wouldn't be able to stop the Chiefs. Logic would suggest. Sammy Watkins for Ravens had 4 for 96, but that backfield rotation was the story. Well, I don't know. I'm taking the Chiefs. Don't get it twisted. I'm taking the Chiefs. They're gonna start 2-0. Sorry, Baltimore. You're gonna be 0-2, and there are gonna be questions about John Harbaugh's job after this week. Give me the Chiefs. Lions at Packers on Monday Night Football. Detroit come off that 33-41 loss to San Fran. Jared Goff, though, 66% completion, 338 yards, 33 and 8. 338 passing yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. He's going to be a fantasy asset this year. I've been meaning to sprinkle some more fantasy references in this episode, but I'm going to do it here specifically because he's going to have a lot of garbage time on his hands. And anybody that plays fantasy knows quarterback garbage time, usually a good thing. And he's going to have a lot of it. TJ Hawkinson was a beneficiary, 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown. They're taking on those Packers who are going to be ornery coming off that drubbing that they had at the hands of the New Orleans Saints. Rodgers only 53% completion, 133 yards, no tugs, 2 picks. Neither one of them were really his fault like that either. I think one of them was. I take that back. I think one of them was definitely on him. But he's going to be pissed. The whole team's going to be pissed. And what better whooping boy than the Detroit Lions? There's just no better team to go up against and get your frustrations out on. After all the questions that they faced this week about how committed everybody is, this one's going to be ugly, and it's going to be on Monday. Now, I'm sorry, Detroit Lions fans. You about to get talked. I saw a tweet, and it was correct. There's nothing quite like the pain of having your team getting washed on prime time and the whole world watching because everybody's talking about how crap you are. Trust me. We experienced it here in Midwest and Chicago last Sunday. So not surprised, but I definitely still think that the Sunday night game is going to be better than the Monday night game because the Pack is going to take that one and ton. Sorry, Detroit fans. Sorry. Switching gears. The comments that you heard before the show. Richard Jefferson talking to Kendrick Perkins about, just what it was or who his picks were. I'm sorry. Different clip, different segment. He was talking to Kendrick Perkins about the best team in the NBA and who he felt was going to win the title this coming season.
The Nets are perk. The Nets are the better team. They are the better team. They are the more talented team. They have all the necessary pieces to get it done. They were 2 inches away from, in my opinion, winning a championship this year with 2 guys, one guy out and another guy at 30% of his ability. That's how great Kevin Durant is.
So you heard him reference the few inches away, talk about Kevin Durant's big ass foot. That's a quote, direct quote from Kevin Durant. And how close he feels the Nets were to winning a championship. I don't disagree that they would have gotten past. They would have won their game, obviously, sent the Bucks home, and they probably would have beat Atlanta. You know what? Are we sure that they would have been able to handle the Suns? Because the Suns can play better defense. The Suns can shoot. I don't know if the physicality of Milwaukee, I think, got to Phoenix more than Phoenix's talent level. Well, I guess that's talent too. But you know what I'm saying? Their offensive prowess, I think it was a physicality on the defensive end. The Nets don't have that. So if it's a shootout, I don't know if you necessarily get the walk away, run away victory like that. But I do think it's interesting that he put it, the foregone conclusion that it's Lakers and the Nets. Or rather, that's what our discussion is. Because it reminds me how disappointed I've been in the past few seasons that we've built up the Clippers to not be what they were supposed to be. They were supposed to be the contenders. We gave them a pass of the first year because it was the first year, for year one. Now, it's year 3 of the experiment. They're about to be on their 3rd attempt at finding a point guard. The latest is John Wall could be getting moved there. I didn't even think it was possible. I was out here like, man, they can't even make that work. Somebody to point out to me like, look, Kennard plus, who was it, Serge? Somebody like that. Make the money work. I'm like, oh, damn, they could do it. Like, but what's it go? Like, Kawhi's not playing this year, so then I can contend. No, don't look for that. But I just go back to the Nets, and I just hope that we get it. That's what I'm getting at here. I just want to, can we see it, please? We never got Lakers, and we're not going to get it the way we thought. By the time they get there, I'm not sure that we'll get anybody that's in a level to be, this is the matchup that we would expect to see. Nah. Bron's getting older. Kawhi is coming back off another knee injury. Russell will be older by that time. Like, it's just not going to be what we want it to be. So for the Nets, I just hope that they make it happen. Get there. That means the Lakers got to hold up their end too. And I know a lot of people are going to be against that thought that they can make it. But I'm not going to hold. Look, hey, man. I still feel like Bron is the best player in the game when locked in and healthy. We'll see. Because, yes, you heard KD. A lot of people say KD is the man. I want to see that get proven out on the main stage. Can we get that once, please? We always get it so close just to have either our Cinderella story or our perfect battle of the Titans knocked away. Please, sports gods. I just want to let's do the whole year. I'm gonna get greedy. Get the whole year. The run. Football, baseball, basketball, hockey. Let me get Titans. Let me get those big clashes. Let me get best versus the best. That's all I want. That's not a lot. So, that being said, moving on, my next question is, who are this year's Hawks and Nets? Or, I'm sorry, Suns. What teams are going to surprise, come out of nowhere to make that run? Hawks are a special case because they weren't supposed to do this. They made an in-season turnaround that I don't think anybody... No, not many teams... I got to check the history on this, but I don't know how many teams are coming back from being 6 games under 500, making a coaching change, and then running to the conference finals. Doesn't seem like that's a very long list of teams. Just doesn't strike me to be a long list. So, be interested to see that. And I'm going to have to get a better database, but off the top of my head, Memphis... I don't see New Orleans being that. I think that's taking a step back. And honestly, now that I say it out loud, Memphis could take a step back too. Because I don't know if I'm a biggest fan of, as big of a fan of the move that they made this offseason than everybody else is. Not sure I like Steven Adams there. I don't like them trading away Jonas Valanciunas for sure. You're gonna have to look into it a little bit more and get a little bit more insight. Cause I thought it was gonna be Memphis, and I thought I was gonna say that you could see a team like, well, it would be Toronto. But in the East, I think you just see a return of like Toronto and Boston to being good. Mostly Boston. But in the West, you got some teams. You got a couple of teams. Minnesota's got more talent than they're playing like. They'll probably never make it, though. Sacramento, too. They're not good. They're really just not a good roster. They're not constructed right. But who's going to be? Somebody's going to do it. Who? Indiana, they're going to return? Detroit, are they going to surprise people? Detroit would be the one that I think would be the most surprising because they're the young team. But I think if we're looking for a comparison, it would be Memphis. And I can see Memphis doing a very similar thing where they do some in-season trades to kind of tweak it finally, and then they break through. That would probably be my big is it a prediction? I don't know. I'm just guessing at this one because predictions will come later on in the season. But I feel like Memphis is that next team, and they lost. They went to the playoffs, so they don't even count. But I feel like they're the next team to make some noise. That has the potential to make some noise. We'll have to see. Again, this was all super duper early. Hawks headlines real quick before we get up out of here, man. Just recently talked about how they're starting the Bleacher Report redraft series. They've done 16. We'd already done 17, so we didn't cover that one. But I did 18 just recently. And the Hawks, when I get all done with this, man, they will look a lot different than they do now. 2018 saw them miss out on Trae Young. They ended up with Michael Porter Jr. And honestly, my ultimate summary from that was, while he's a great player, there's just no replacing what Trae Young brings on the floor. I compared it to an NFL quarterback. You can win without an elite one, but you probably want an elite one anyway. And for as great as Michael Porter Jr. is, I'm not sure if he'll ever be the number one guy on a championship team. And so with that, there goes I'd rather stick with the way it was. But it's an interesting stuff. Andy Bailey of Bleacher Report has been doing it, and it's a really good rundown of everything. And then I also tracked the clutch stats for the Hawks. And honestly, only Trae Young was there. Just Trae Young. The Hawks were the only team of the final 8. I'm sorry, I take that back. There's one other team of the final 8 teams in the postseason that had only one player with fewer than 2 points in the clutch per game. Okay? So NBA.com defines clutch in the clutch as final 5 minutes of a game that's within 5 minutes. Or within 5 points, rather. 5 points or less. 5 minutes or less. Okay? Of all the teams in the postseason, the Hawks and the Clippers were the only two to have one player with 2 points or more in the clutch time. In the regular season, that was just stats in the regular season. But still, those are the teams that ended up in the postseason. Of the Final Four, it was just them two. Guess who went home? Those two. So that article was kind of just asking who's going to step up. Who's going to be that guy? Capella was efficient, didn't get enough offense, and you really aren't counting on him for that anyway. Bogdanovich just seems like a likely choice. Top 10 shooting guard in the league, right? Really showed his medal in the playoffs last season. He's a possibility. Kevin Huerter won you a game by himself. Well, not by himself, but 27 in game 6 against Philly, 7 against Philly. Close that bad boy out, right? It's John Collins. He got the bag, 125. Got to earn it. It's got to be him. He was lauded for taking a step back statistically to take a step forward as a teammate and help them win. Now he's got to join the two. I need his stats to come back up. I need him to put the numbers up. It comes with efficiency. Add some more diversity to his skill set, passing the ball a little bit better. Those kinds of things. He can do that. And if he does that, he can actually make a case for most improved player, which is something else that I talked about. So check out Soaring Down South to get look at that. Check out Soaring Down South to get the latest on all of those things there and what's happening with the Hawks, and of course, what's going to be happening coming up here as we get set. Training camp's almost here, man. We're getting close, so keep an eye on that. And then the Bulls. Talked about the Bulls and some bull at points here real quick. They, while researching for the Hawks, found out that, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan were both in the top 10 in clutch points last season per game and will be the only team to have 2 players in the top 10. Now, granted, they didn't do it in the same team, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. But it's very encouraging for their late game execution, which we know last season was atrocious when it was left to Zach. A lot of times, the decision-making proved to be problematic. We ended up with turnovers and poor shots. That, I think, will be minimized this season with DeRozan. So go ahead and check that out, pippeneasy.com. Read the other stuff as well. Of course, Soaring Down South, like I said, and Last Word on Pro Football, where I wrote about the Bears and needing to get some pass rush from 52 and 94, especially 52. You got rated as the number 1 pass rusher, bro. I don't want to hear about all these all around and he's really close. Get there, fam. That's the point blank period. I'm tired of this. That's an excuse that I'm no longer making. So hopefully they can go out there and prove me wrong. Bears this weekend against the Bengals, but I don't see it. The Bulls, like I said, have got 2 closers on the roster, so I'm not as worried I've never been as worried as everybody else is about the roster, but I'm definitely not after seeing that bit of information. So that's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshieBuck. Hit the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com. Email address, clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, read the stuff. Like I said, Last Word on Pro Football. Pimpin' Ain't Easy, Soaring Down South. And follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 3zerospod. That's the number 3 zeros and pod. Until the very next time, you already know what it is.